If you find yourself feeling resentful or exhausted when you say yes to something, there may be a small voice inside of you that has been screaming no for a very long time. And that's the reality for many people pleasers. And if that sounds like you, this is the video for you. I'm the trauma doula. My name is Tony. I'm a somatic guide and medicine worker, and I help people who are childhood trauma survivors and generational cycle breakers who have had to shape shift and shrink and suppress their truth just to stay connected to people, places, and things that may no longer serve them. I went to school to become a social worker, and while I gained so much from that path, I recognized that it was truly a band-aid system for issues that needed surgery. And that's what led me to here, becoming a trauma doula, and how to help people come back to themselves, not in theory, but in practice. Not in theory, but in body. Today, I want to talk about why you say yes when you want to say no, where it comes from, and how you can begin to come back to your truth gently, somatically, and without guilt. So let's talk about something, the all-important fawn response. Oftentimes people pleasing is a fawn response. It's a system of survival that you needed to incorporate so that you could get your needs met. Needs. You were raised to put other people's needs before your own. You were groomed to think about what someone else needed above what you needed, wanted, desired, or even thought of. So your every waking thought at one point became, how can I make them happy? How can I make sure that I fit into the box that you need me to fit into so that I can be accepted, supported, loved? Ultimately, how can I be loved? What can I do to deserve love? And the truth in that is that as a child, there's nothing you needed to do to deserve the love of your caregivers. That was just their job. That's just what they were supposed to do. So I would say your body learns to say yes to avoid conflict and to get and receive love and belonging. And so this isn't your fault. And while I think some people try to describe people pleasers as this negative connotation, I really feel like it comes from this place in our society where we decide to victim blame trauma survivors by pathologizing them and using certain words and phrases to make it seem like you're the problem, right? And so I would take a lot of things with a grain of salt. I don't even generally like using the term or phrase people pleaser. That's just what's generally understood. And so I know that you will click on this video and find it and say, I identify as a people pleaser. You are experiencing what is called the fawn trauma response. It's where you go along to get along. You fit in and shapeshift to get your needs met because they weren't being met any other way. And so the best way for you to find love and belonging was to people please. This is especially true if you have emotionally immature and unavailable caregivers and parents. When they're emotionally immature, they're also emotionally unavailable. They may have experienced their own trauma that made them unavailable to you. It doesn't really matter. What matters is what happened. What matters is that you were a child that needed love, support, belonging, and you didn't get it. And the only way for you to get it was to become a people pleaser. And this really takes on, I think, people who attach to people pleasing as a way to get their needs met. You often already had a natural tendency towards wanting to see people happy, and that gets distorted. So many of the masks that we wear for trauma as trauma survivors are masks that are distorted from our natural tendencies as human beings. Some people love to make people smile. They love to make people happy. And then that tendency gets distorted and becomes people pleasing. Someone becomes the class clown. These different things start to happen because you start to shapeshift and turn into whatever you need so that I won't get deserted and left behind and that you love me, right? Everyone needs to belong. It's not a wish on a wish list. It's a need. We are humans. Humans are social beings, and social beings need love and belonging. So there's nothing wrong with you. And recognizing you don't need to be fixed is the first step in understanding your people-pleasing tendencies. So the other thing that happens as you begin to become a people pleaser and go deeper into that mask is your intuition gets turned and tamped down because you're deprioritizing yourself and your internal senses and your needs and trying to get your needs met in these other ways. And so you have to turn your intuition down. Your intuition is a full body, soul, energy response to things that arise in life, right? So we've all had an experience where you felt like you needed to go home. You just got an overwhelming feeling like you needed to leave wherever you were and get out of there. And maybe you did. Some of us have had experiences with our intuition where we knew something and we didn't listen and we faced consequences. When you are wearing trauma mask, people-pleasing, caregiving, perfectionism, those are all masks we wear as trauma survivors to get certain needs met that weren't met, to live and shapeshift in ways that make us more palatable to other people. When you are wearing those masks, your intuition gets tamped down so that you can be agreeable, so that you can be safe. Ultimately, all of this boils down to what helps you feel safe and secure in your relationships with people. And sometimes it was the only way. And that's not your fault. All of these things have roots in your inner child, your inner world, and recognizing that the way to begin to shift is to be able to interact with and contact that inner world that we all have and tend to ignore. At one point, you learned that love equaled compliance above all else. This is especially true for kids with caregivers, parents who were hypercritical, especially I think between the ages of 3 and 5. So if you think about that time in your life, which you might not even be able to remember, that's okay, right? That's okay if you don't remember it. But oftentimes kids are trying to start up. They're trying to be self-directed. They're learning how to do things, and you'll see a little kid and they'll say like, I can do it by myself. That is an important step towards independence. But it also means independent thought. It means I'm gonna do it all on my own, undirected. And if you had a parental figure who was overly controlling, and they derailed every attempt for you to be independent or step out on your own or think for yourself, you learn that, again, love equaled compliance. It equaled doing what I said and not anything else, which leads to this people-pleasing, this deep need to say, oh, if I just do whatever you want to make you happy, then maybe you will love me a little bit more. This survival role becomes an identity. You identify with being a people pleaser rather than recognizing that it's just a mask and you can take it down. But who are you without that mask? What's vitally important to understand is that connection is needed. Connection with other human beings is needed on some level. Someone is farming the food. The only example I can think of a person not needing another person is those hermits that lived in caves by themselves potentially. But that's not how we live now. Especially now, our world gets even more connected. Our economies are connected. We're connected to each other on deeper and deeper levels. And so recognizing that a lot of people-pleasing tendencies comes from the need of connection. And if connection doesn't feel safe and it doesn't feel stable, we're going to do everything we can to stabilize the connections, even toxic connections. Because think about it. If you have emotionally immature and unavailable parents, that's a toxic relationship. That was your first toxic relationship. Congratulations. And so as you start to unwind your people-pleasing tendencies, and this won't be the only video about this, so just an overview, okay? But as you start to unwind those tendencies, recognize that it comes from a place of having your first relationship be toxic. And to reestablish the connection with yourself, the connection with your intuition, the connection of like what it feels like to have a safe, stable, secure connection with another human being, that is what it's going to take to begin to unravel some of that people pleasing. What I say is your no is sacred. I would tell clients all the time, if I can't trust your yes, how can I trust anything you say? I want to be able to trust your yes. And if you're telling me yes when you really mean no, you're breaking my boundary. Because I have a boundary, I'm asking you because I really want to know, not because I want to have you pushed in a certain direction. If we're talking about pushing someone in a certain direction, in a certain way to make them say yes to you because that's the answer you wanted and you're only asking because you want them to say yes, not because you want to hear an answer, like that's toxic. At times, we need to recognize that if you're feeling resentment when you're saying yes, then your body does not agree with your yes. And tuning more deeply into the body so that we can begin to recognize when your yes is a yes, when your yes is a no, when you should be saying no. And oftentimes you're probably guilt tripped for setting boundaries, but eventually the guilt trip that you were given for setting boundaries becomes an internal dialogue of a guilt trip when you want to set boundaries. So how do you know that you should be saying no instead of yes? When someone asks you something, you might feel tension. You might suddenly get a headache. You might suddenly feel heavy or achy. You might even go blank. Or you might get a little feeling of guilt. And then you say yes, right? That probably that guilt was probably the first feeling of like, I really don't want to. I don't have the energy. I don't actually have the time. But then there's that guilt, and then there's the push to get you to do whatever it is to be accepted, to be loved. The thing is, at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to be fixed. You're not broken. People pleasing is a somatic response, a trauma mask that you wear so that you will receive love, validation, attention, and initially from your parents, from your caregivers. And when you go out into the world, you're looking for the same connection. You're looking for found family. And so you're going to do those same patterns with other people, with friends, with other people you meet in the world. So recognize this is something you can change. This is something you can change. You don't have to be a people pleaser forever. You don't have to stay stuck in your fawn response. And a part of it is naming and understanding what it is. And the other part of it is giving yourself a little bit of grace. I don't know what you've been through, but you do. So give yourself the grace. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel, and links are in the description box below if any of this resonated with you. Until next time.